In this second episode of Atom Bomb Baby, we sit down with Professor Crane and we talk about the contemporary factors of these nuclear bombs and truly what was going in Truman's head when using these weapons. We'll also greatly discuss the Doomsday Clock.
Anything but calm, a regular pint-sized atom bomb. Atom bomb, baby, atom bomb.
Good evening and welcome back to the Atom Bomb Baby podcast. I'm your host, Cadet Putman here at the Virginia Military Institute, and I'm accompanied by the illustrious Captain Crane.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My name is Philip Crane. I am a policy expert on all things nuclear. I am a current visiting professor at the Virginia Military Institute, shaping young minds.
Oh yeah, raw. And you did graduate from here, correct?
I did back in 2016,
Uh-huh.
back when we had a competitive acceptance rate.
No. Yeah. So I hear you come here to talk about a plethora of things. One of those being the Doomsday Clock. Can you kind of elaborate like the concept of this Doomsday Clock?
Sure. Well, we're in luck because I do have the Doomsday Clock here
Really?
with us.
Oh.
Oh God!
This is the original from 1947.
Oh my gosh.
Now, so this is a really important piece.
Yeah.
You might want to zoom in.
I'll definitely zoom
Yes.
in. Joe Rogan can't get this on his podcast. That's for sure.
So this was designed in 1947
Yep.
by many of the same scientists who were working for the Manhattan Project,
Really.
and the first concerted effort by the United States to build a nuclear weapon. And many of those scientists went on to create this clock. And 1947, you can see this is the time to midnight as established by those scientists at 7 minutes to midnight. Representing right when the clock strikes midnight has been ushers in an era of nuclear holocaust. Now, 1947, we are 7 minutes to midnight.
Yeah.
2020, we fast forward to about 3 minutes to midnight.
That's a lot.
And this is an ongoing project, so every year they update how close we are to midnight. And now we are just about here. 89 seconds to midnight as of January 2025.
Seems pretty accurate to me.
Yeah.
So many
89
factors
seconds.
going on
I was
here,
going to ask that,
right?
yeah.
I guess intuitively one would think that in an era with less nuclear weapons than we had during the height of the Cold War, that the clock would turn back, and we'd be back towards that 7 minute mark. But many things in 2025, the war in Ukraine has ticked us closer to that midnight stroke. More recently, in the last 48 hours, you may have read about an impending military strike from India against Pakistan.
Okay.
Both nations with a nuclear arsenal. And so with that, I wanted to turn to some of the data regarding this. Jamie, could you throw up the data?
Yes.
Okay, so we have this legacy of nuclear deproliferation. And as you can see from this figure, right, around 1984, 86, the sheer number of nuclear warheads reaches an all-time high.
Right.
Right, the Soviet Union having almost about twice as many nukes as the United States.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So maybe a better way to look at this is comparatively,
Oh
right?
my
So
God. Wow.
red, Soviet Union; blue, United States. Of course, we get a head start on our nuclear program, being the first to deploy it tactically and strategically. But pretty soon after, right, the Soviets overtake us at a ratio of about 2 to 1. Few things happen. SALT treaties, nuclear deproliferation near the end of the Cold War steeply reduces this. So the story we get here, right, is one of build up and then mutually agreed upon de-escalation. But I would argue that this doesn't tell the whole story. Right? We can also look at maybe some other powers that have risen in more recent years, and we can look at those comparatively. And now this tells a far different story, right? Now we have smaller powers who, since the end of the Cold War, has gradually increased their nuclear arsenal. And the narrative surrounding at least the US-Soviet competition was that of mutually assured destruction. Yes. A prisoner's dilemma game of two actors who are bound to this pacifying effect of cooperating. The alternative being, of course, mutually assured destruction. Now here we have more powers, while globally nukes have deproliferated. There's been a proliferation amongst these smaller powers, right? We're looking at China, Israel, India, Pakistan, and North Korea, which kind of throws a wrench in the way that we treated the threat of nukes, that being of a conflict between two major powers locked in this two-player game theory. But here now we have more players, more actors, and so the question arises: does this framework work? Yeah. Does this framework actually have the same kind of pacifying effect that some say that mutual assured destruction has when you have multiple actors playing this game all at once? And I think, interestingly, you'll see, right, out of these, leaving out China, you have India and Pakistan, who have, right, on basically are on parity with their escalation of their nuclear programs. The lesson here, right, is even though there are far fewer nukes than in operation than there were in the 80s and the 70s, just because there are fewer nukes worldwide doesn't mean that there aren't more actors now that have access to these.
So do you think the reason that these new powers are escalating their development of nuclear weapons is to, like, in a sense, either because they're scared of the ones that, like, the US and Russia still, like, obviously lead by thousands, right? Are they scared and trying to get on even terms, or are they recognizing that the US and Russia are de-escalating and they're trying to get ahead?
I think a lot of it has to do with this idea of American exceptionalism, where we have this idea where the United States, we are allowed to do certain things that other countries are not allowed to do. Yeah. So, really, you ask a country like Pakistan, like Iran, why do they feel like a nuclear arsenal is necessary? It's because other major powers have this privilege to have them. Yeah. Right. And we saw with Ukraine, they agreed in the 90s to give up their nuclear arsenal in exchange for a promise from the Russians that they will never be invaded by the Russians. And here we are. So I think a lot of this, especially nuclear policy that's been driven by the United States and Russia, is a legacy of what is right for me isn't right for you. Yeah. You know, I can have my cake, but you can't have it too. Yeah.
So when you say give up their arsenal, did they, like, give it to the Russians, or did they just, like, disassemble them so that they can't?
I don't think they physically gave the Russians more nukes. I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. But it was basically coerced deproliferation for the Ukrainians in exchange for this guarantee of sovereignty. But also, I think we need to push back on the idea that mutually assured destruction itself was a necessarily pacifying force, right? Because to do that, one, you have to ignore the 250,000 people who died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. with the very first deployment of nukes, you have to think of the countless numbers who have died in conflicts due to the Cold War, due to this security dilemma where the United States and Russia were not going to go to war with each other, but now you have all of these violent coups in Latin America. We have these proxy wars in Asia and the Middle East, all to contain the Soviet Union. So really, it's not as pacifying, I think, as people have given it credit for.
So, kind of rewinding time, and with your expertise in foreign policy and in international relations, why do you think Truman really felt the need to drop the bombs during World War II on a foreign policy standpoint? Because we know if we deploy troops, we're going to lose thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. But kind of this new introduction that changed the landscape of foreign policy itself.
I think a lot of it, and it might be tough for some people to hear, but I think a lot of it derives from the severe dehumanization that Japanese people underwent in the United States. Yeah. Right? There was a far greater appetite for the United States to drop atomic weapons on Japan than it was for Germany.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was a driving factor.
Mm-hmm.
The not a lot of appetite for a full scale invasion of the Japanese homeland, and probably a pressure to be the ones to win this race. To the atom bomb.
Yeah, correct. Especially since they're kind of head to head with the Nazis, but then luckily we defeated the Nazis before they're able to finish their nuclear program. Especially since Hitler deemed it Jewish science in the first place.
Yeah, one of the great ironies of the Second World War is this a massive brain drain that leaves Nazi Germany because of all of these policies targeting academics, targeting intellectuals, targeting scientists, who all flee to Great Britain, to flee to the United States, and they are the ones to then to give us the bomb.
Well, sir, thank you for joining me here on the Atom Bomb podcast again.
Happy to be here. Always a pleasure and always an honor to be featured.
Thank you. Yay! Good evening, and welcome back to the Atom Bomb Babies podcast. I am your host.
This is what we were doing for like 2 hours the other night. Laughing at his introduction.
You didn't tell me it was called the Atom Bomb Babies.
We're like the same height.
I'm getting a fucking D on this project.
Except for one got like cancer from the radiation and just died.
That's
at like
crazy.
30. Jeez. And only like one girl lived, and that's how like the story's like.
That's so crazy.
That's insane.
Wow, dude. Don't play
maybe research the bombs you're gonna be dropping on civilian targets.
Or don't play in snow in the desert.
Yeah. That might have been a red flag. Natural selection.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. I don't know if this is blame the victim.
This episode of the Atomic Babies podcast is brought to you by Zyn, VMI faculty's choice for a clean, healthy, and tobacco-free nicotine high. Healthy?